Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Today we are going to start our second lecture of quadratic equations. In this lecture, we will cover exercise 1.1, its question number 2, the first three parts. So let's start what the question is. The question is solved by factorization. First of all, we have to know what are the steps of factorization of quadratic equation. The first step is always to change the given equation to the quadratic form. In the questions, you will see that there are a lot of questions which are not in the quadratic form. So first we have to change it in the quadratic form. And what that form is? Ax squared plus bx plus c. Here you may see that c is the constant term. There is a question in the exercise where the constant term is not involved. So again, that is a quadratic equation whenever it is equal to 0 and having the highest degree as 2. Then the second step is take common from the equation, if any. Then third step is factorize using midterm break method. So let's start part 1 of question. Okay, the part 1 is x squared minus x minus 20 equals to 0. We can see that the equation is already in the quadratic form as we are having the square term, the term with the power 1 and a constant term 20. So what we are going to do now, first of all we will go to our working. First of all we will look for the central coefficient. What is the central coefficient? Central term is the term having x with it. So there is no coefficient, so we can say that the coefficient is 1. Then we will, for the midterm break, we will multiply the first term and the third term with each other, the coefficients of both. In the first term we have coefficient 1 and in the third term the constant is 20. So we will multiply 1 to 20 and we will get the answer 1 into 20 equals to 20. Now we will get two factors of 20 in such a way that after multiplication of those two factors we get that answer, and if we add or subtract those factors we get 1, that is the central coefficient. Again I repeat, after multiplication of those two factors we should be having this answer, and after adding or subtracting those two factors we must be having this answer. So now making factors. Starting from 1, 1 into 20 would be 20, 2 into 10 would be 20 and 4 into 5 would be 20. So all these are having after multiplying we are having 20, but only the term 4 into 5, after subtracting 5 minus 4 we get 1. So this would be your midterm break terms. We have to write all the terms as it is, but instead of 1 I will write 5 minus 4. I have written it in the bracket and the next time I will solve the bracket. So x square will remain the same, minus will remain the same, only for 1 I have written 5 minus 4 and x minus 20 equals to 0 is the same. Now talking about that negative sign outside the bracket, that negative sign will change all the signs inside the bracket. We have the sign of plus with 5 and minus with 4. So I will change that plus sign to minus and that minus sign to plus. Here you can see x square is the same, minus x multiplying with 5 it would become minus 5x, and minus into minus would be plus. So 4 into x would be 4x. Minus 20 equal to 0 will remain the same. Whenever the four terms are involved in the equation, we take common from two terms. So 5x x square minus 5x and 4x minus 20 would be treated separately. Taking common from the first two terms, x square minus 5x. The common term is x. No constant will be common because 1 and 5, we cannot take any common term from these two. Taking x as the common term, the remaining terms would be written in the bracket. So I have put the bracket here. X square, we have taken 1x outside the bracket, so only 1x remains there. So I have written x, then the same sign as in the above equation, minus. X is outside the bracket, so only 5 is left, so I have written 5 here. Then the plus sign, same, 4x minus 20. As you can see that 20 is the multiple of 4, so 5 times 20, we can take 4 as the common term. So I have written 4 here, then the bracket, The remaining term from 4x is x minus same sign. 4 how many times 20? 4 5 times 20. So we will write 5 inside the bracket, because if we open that bracket, 4 into x would be 4x and 4 into minus 5 would be minus 20. In the next step, the common one thing that you should keep in mind is our brackets should be the same, x minus 5, x minus 5. If we are having x plus 5 here, the solution is wrong, so go to the previous step and correct it. We are having the same signs, that is x minus 5, x minus 5, so I will write that bracket once, and the digits that are outside both the brackets, we will write it again, x plus 4 in the separate brackets equal to 0. Coming to the next step, I'll split the brackets from here. X minus 5 would be equal to 0 and x plus 4 would be equal to 0. So, as you all know that solving means taking the answer of the variables. So, we have to take the answer of the variables. So, we have to take minus 5 to the other side of the equation. It would become x plus equals to plus 5, and then again x plus 4 to the other side of the equation would be minus 4. So x equals to 5 and x equals to minus 4 would be our answers. Now question number 2, part 2. Here you can see in this part that already a bracket is involved. So whenever a bracket is involved, we have to solve it first. Solving, y into y would be y square, y into minus 5 would be minus 5y. You can see that this equation is not in the quadratic form because all the terms are not to the one side of the equation and the equation is not equal to 0. So I will take y square minus 5 towards 3y square and I will put the equation equals to 0. So 3y square plus y would become minus y square, and minus 5y would become plus 5y, and the equation would become equals to 0. As you can see, 3y square and minus y square are like terms, so first we have to add or subtract them. So 3 minus 1 would be equals to 2 and y square will remain the same, plus 5y equals to 0. Here you can see that no constant is involved. We are already having just two terms. So we will take common from these two terms. Whenever we have three terms involved, we have to break the midterm to change them to four terms, and then we will take common from two terms. But as there are only two terms involved, so I'll take common from these two terms. 2 and 5, they are not multiples of each other, so we cannot, and as both are prime numbers, so no common factor from these two digits. So y would be the only common factor from the first digit, 2y square. We have taken 1y to outside the equation, so 2 and y would remain inside the bracket, plus would remain the same. 5 as y is outside the bracket equals to 0. In this, we have to split it from here, that is y would be equals to 0 and 2y minus 5 plus 5 would be equals to 0. As there is no solution of this side, so we will solve only this side. Plus 5 taking to the other side of the equation, we get minus 5, and 2 as it is multiplying with the variable, so it would divide to the other side of the equation. That would y is equals to minus 5 by 2 and y equals to 0 are the answer of our two terms. Moving to the question number 2, part 3. Again, you can see that this part is also not in the quadratic form. 17x square is to the other side of the equation and 4 and minus 3x is to the left side of the equation. So we have to change all these to one side of the equation and then we will do the factorization. I have taken 4 minus 32x towards 17x square, as the x square term is the greater term, so we have to take all the other terms towards it, and I have put the equation equals to 0. We can place 0 to any side of the equation. That doesn't matter that our left hand side was equal to 0. We can write it as equal to 0 in the right side as well. Again, we will do the same procedure as done before. We have to go to our working. We have to look for the central coefficient, which is 32. Then we will multiply the first digit coefficient to the third digit coefficient, that is 17 into 4, that would be equals to 68. Again, we are going to make the multiples of 68 as factors of 68 as to get 68 after multiplication and 32 after addition or subtraction. So these three are the factors. 1 multiplied by 68, 2 into 34 and 4 into 17. All multiplying all these we get the answer as 68, but only after subtracting 34 from 2 we get the answer 32. So this would be the our midterm break digits. Again I have written 17x square same plus same sign. Only instead of 32 I have written 34 minus 2, which is also the same. 34 minus 2 is 32. X minus 4 equals to 0. Now opening this bracket with x, we get 34x minus 2x in the center. Now you can see that there are 4 terms, so we can take common from the two terms. So taking common from the 2 terms, first 2 terms are 17 and 34, x square and x. 34 is the multiple of 17. 17 2 times 34, and x square and x we can take common. So 17x is the common digit. From the first digit, only x remains because 17 and 1x is outside the bracket. Plus will remain the same, as you know 17 2 times 34. So I will write 2. X is outside the bracket, so we won't put it inside the bracket. Then this minus sign will remain the same. 2 and 4, obviously 4 is the multiple of 2, so I will take 2 as the common digit. Then x, as you can see here that minus is taken as common, so this digit, that is minus, would be changed to plus, because if you open minus 2 and multiply it with x plus 2, if you open this bracket you can see that minus 2 into x would be minus 2x, and minus 2 into plus 2 would be plus minus 4 and 4. So minus, whenever taken common, changes the sign of the term inside the bracket, and minus, whenever multiplying with the bracket, changes the sign. So in both the cases the sign is changed. As you can see, x plus 2 and x plus 2 are the same brackets. It means our question is right. Our midterm break is correct. So I'll write the bracket once, x plus 2, and all the digits outside these two brackets in the other bracket, that is 17x minus 2, and that would be equal to 0. Again, splitting these two brackets, we get x plus 2 equals to 0 and 17x minus 2 equals to 0. As solving is always having the answer of the variable, so taking this plus 2 to the other side of the equation, and again to this side, minus 2 to the other side of the equation, and then 17. Always remember that first of all we have to take the constant term to the other side of the equation, and then the coefficient with the variable to the other side of the equation. So we get x equals to minus 2 and 17x equals to 2. First I have taken the constant to the other side of the equation. Now I'll take the coefficient with a variable, that is x equals to